ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace.
Pacing. Every story has it, but everyone's wrong about it. People tend to think that pacing is about how much action is in a story, and they're wrong. A perfect example of this is when people watch a movie where there are just people talking. They think it's a slow-paced movie. On the flip side, they also think that Transformers movies are fast-paced. To put it simply, when it comes to pacing, everyone's an idiot, from pretentious critics to people who watch Fast and Furious movies. So that brings us to the essential question. To me, pacing's clear. It's the rate of information that the audience is given and the speed at which the plot and characters progress. A perfect example is the recent Dune movie. Throughout the movie, there's a steady flow of information coming to the audience, and it's incredibly efficient with the shot composition. Some parts of the movie don't have action, but that doesn't mean the pacing is slow. It just means the information you're getting isn't action. On the flip side, when Dune has a ton of action, it's not fast-paced. The pacing of the story is very consistent. You move through the action and non-action parts of the story at the same pace. The action scenes don't take longer to cover the same amount of information that would be in a non-action scene. Consider this scene from the first Dune movie. In the scene, Paul and his family arrive on the planet Arrakis. On the surface, this scene takes 3.5 minutes to play out. It must be a really slow-paced scene, right? But in reality, it's packed to the brim with new information for the audience. I don't even have the volume on for you, and yet you're able to pick up so much new information. Lady Jessica and the Duke love each other. Gurney's religious. The shield on their armor are blue. Paul has a religious influence already, and he's excited to reunite with the person receiving them. Each shot conveys new information for the audience, and it's a nice, steady flow of information. And that's consistent for the non-action scenes as well as the action scenes. So in reality, Dune is a very well-paced movie, despite its claims that it's slow. Transformers is a perfect example of what people think is a fast-paced movie, but in reality is a boring, long slog. The last Transformers movie I watched was Dark Side of the Moon, and I remember walking out of that movie feeling completely exhausted. But the movie had a ton of action. That's when I realized that the action scenes in the movie were literally an entire hour of the movie, and it wasn't meaningful at all. It was just explosion after explosion, but the story wasn't progressing. They were actually taking forever to cover one part of the story. This is bad pacing or slow pacing. Look at how much goddamn action there is. Nothing with actual characters is happening. They're literally just killing NPCs endlessly. Nothing's progressing. Just because there's a lot of action in a movie doesn't mean that the pacing is fast. And in the example of Transformers, it's actually really slow and bad because no story or plot or characters is actually progressing despite all the action. On the flip side, I've watched movies that are completely shitty, boring movies only to have pretentious movie people tell me that it's just slow-paced. No, it's not. Nothing is happening. Having a scene where nothing progresses is not the same as having a scene where things progress slowly. No pacing is even worse than slow pacing. An example of this is probably every single A24 movie that doesn't become a big hit. A24 is great, but they also make a ton of artsy movies where they have tons and tons of scenes of nothing happening. And that isn't slow pacing, that's no pacing, and that's a boring movie. Pacing is important, but people conflate it with action. There are action movies with bad pacing. There are plain dramas with great pacing. It's about the rate at which the story and characters are progressing and the consistency at which those two things progress. A movie with great pacing should consistently be progressing the story and characters in each scene, whether there's action or not. So next time you're with your friends and they're all happy and say that a movie was fast-paced, ruin the entire night and argue with them for no gain. It's what I always do. Thanks for watching, and God bless.